David Guttman is a serial entrepreneur. He's raised over $25 million. He has undergrad from Brown and his MBA from Wharton. And he's here to tell you there is an alternate route and how we can make our kids super successful. Great to have you here with us today. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Sharon. Thanks for having me. Yeah, honestly, I practically begged my daughter not to go to college. She's 25 now. But I remember at the time, I was like, it's not about the money. What if we just put it into Bitcoin and you travel for a bit? She'd be sitting on $8 million if she'd listen to me.
Wow. I mean, it's very unconventional to hear someone like you who's highly educated, very intelligent, to turn around and say, well, it kind of might be worthless. You actually took your Wharton diploma yesterday and you tore it up.
I did.
What was symbolic about that? Why would you do that?
So when you really take a step back and think about it, right? The fact that you're taking an 18-year-old, no offense to Anna, taking an 18-year-old that doesn't really know anything. They don't yet know what they're great at, what their passions are going to be, where their greatest strengths lie. And you're saying, hey, let's spend $250,000, okay, for you to basically decide what the rest of your life is going to be like. I remember, when I was growing up, education made a bit more sense than it does now because accumulating knowledge was harder then because there was no internet. But I'm walking across campus deciding what I'm going to major in while I'm going to meet with my academic advisor. And I'm like, well, my dad did computer stuff and my brother did computer stuff. Maybe it's genetic. That's as much thought as I gave to what my major was going to be. Then by my senior year, the closest thing Brown had to a business degree was organizational behavior and management. I had all but 2 credits. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll double major. That's the total amount of thought that I gave to what I was going to do for the rest of my life. That doesn't make any sense. What we're really doing is we're spending $250,000 to sort of teach kids how to be an adult. 1, it's not the best way to teach them how to be an adult. And 2, that's a really expensive price tag for that purpose. The reason I tore up the Wharton MBA, it was funny when I told a few people I was going to do it, they're like, well, you're going to do it to a copy, right? Not the original. I'm like, no. I said, the reality is it doesn't change the fact that I went there in the first place. And the thing that's, I think, so insidious about the whole thing, it's the dirty secret is getting into those schools is hard. The schools are not responsible for why those people are successful. Mark Zuckerberg dropped out. Michael Dell dropped out. They were successful because they got into those schools, meaning the people they let in are people that are super hard driving, well-rounded for the most part. They probably played some sports in addition to, yada, yada. They have all the check boxes. The schools are taking credit for it, but that's not why they're successful. And so because all the people that go to the Ivy League schools, it's, they're benefiting from the fact that the dirty little secret is that the education didn't really make a difference, that they're not going to say anything about it. Maybe it's because I'm old enough that it doesn't matter. For me, it's like, I want people to know, especially now, it just doesn't make sense to spend $250,000. If you go to Wharton to get your MBA, between lost income and what it's going to cost, $500,000 for 2 years. It just doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense at all, but that's not what we're hearing. You're a rare, to speak up and to have the courage to say, you know what, it's worthless. And then to come up with an alternative, right? A lot of people will complain that this isn't the route, but don't know what to do about it. You've come up with an alternative, something that you think will really, really be a lot more beneficial for young people to be successful. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so while my education at Wharton was basically worthless, especially, and I should say this, to be fair, if you want to go into corporate finance or you want to, do, high frequency trading and really understand finance at a deep level, maybe a Wharton MBA could make some sense, maybe. But if you want to be an entrepreneur, entrepreneurs learn by doing, okay? In fact, making mistakes is, I would argue, as valuable and more valuable in many cases than making the right decision. Because you make the right decision, you don't know whether you were lucky or good. So, so when I was at Wharton, they had something called the Small Business Development Center, where if you got accepted into it, which fortunately I was able to, you basically provide free consulting services to Philadelphia area businesses in exchange for them paying 2/3 of your tuition tax-free. So for a year and a half, my 2 years, I did that. I had over 30 clients in 30 different industries. That's how I learned to be an entrepreneur, by helping those folks figure out, their businesses. Sometimes it would be HR, sometimes, a succession plan for a family-run business. It could be financial modeling for a company trying to raise venture capital. I'd never done any of those things. I had to learn enough to be able to teach them, and I learned in the process. So that's what really kind of struck me. Hey, look, people are going to learn by doing. So the reason I came up with the anti-MBA is, the reality is I knew I could distill down into 4 or 5 hours what it would really take, what I've learned over the last 35 years, to actually be able to really evaluate an idea, understand how to start, scale, and exit a business. And by the way, those are four very different things. Evaluating an idea is a very different process than starting, then scaling, and then exiting. Exiting itself is a whole process that if you get it wrong, it can undo all the value you generated all the way up into that point. And so I said, you know what? I know I can distill this down. I did have an ulterior motive, though. The reason why I created it was, yes, I think I'm going to add a lot of value and help a lot of people think through their business idea. But what I really want is I wanted a way, I decided that for, let's call it the last 15 to 20 years of my career, I only want to spend time coaching and mentoring people that I really like, that are doing things I'm interested in. And the best way for me to do that is to use the course as a filter and then have those people come out at the end. And then I'll interview every single one of them and decide which businesses I'm interested in doing more with.
Wow. So you've created a course that's in 4.5 hours, taking all of the knowledge and all of the best parts of what you've learned and really educating young people or moms or anyone who really wants to take the course. And then you're going to interview them yourself and filter them. And so if they have this brilliant idea, you're actually going to invest in them?
What I'm going to do is it's going to be an invitation-only mastermind for 6 months. So if they've had the wherewithal to get through the course, and I like them on the call, and I like their business idea. And by the way, it doesn't need to be a great business idea. I'll take a mediocre idea executed well over an amazing idea executed poorly any day. So it's mostly about liking them and really understanding if they have the right personality characteristics that I think are going to make somebody be successful. And what I'm going to do then is the mastermind, they're committing for 6 months for me to coach them specifically on their business. I'm only going to allow 10 people to do that. So I'm going to invest my time and energy into 10 people. And at the end of that 6 months, I'll invest in no less than 1 and no more than 3 of those 10 businesses. But the beauty of it is I'll have had 6 full months to evaluate them. Can they attract and retain and lead talent? Can they, do they make adjustments in their business model, their pricing model? Can they take coaching and mentorship? Do they become emotionally invested in their ideas and not able to make pivots? I'll be able to evaluate all of that. So it's like a Shark Tank, but in reverse, where I'm not having to decide to invest up front. They've got to basically demonstrate that they have the things I think will be necessary for them to be successful. And the beauty of it is, kind of like I'm doing with Anna, the business that we're launching inside the course, I love spending time with her. She's just a joy to be around. So it's like, if I can be helpful to people, don't get me wrong, I don't have an aversion to money. I'm happy to make more money. Yes, I'll have equity in all these businesses, but it's way more exciting for me to make other people rich than me.
This is incredible to me because you get to give back and become a mentor and really educate the next generation in a way that they don't have access to. Most people cannot go to a 4-year university and become educated in a way that we can maybe send our children to that. And you've now created a way where for, how much is the course?
It's going to be $5,000.
$5,000. They get everything that you have learned at Brown, at Wharton, in real life, making your money, creating your businesses in 4.5 hours.
That's right. I should say, as it relates to being an entrepreneur. I learned a bunch of other things that have nothing to do with being an entrepreneur. But the things about being an entrepreneur and really, because ultimately the reality is it isn't rocket science. It really isn't. That's part of the reason why I have Anna. So Anna was just summer interning for me, 18 years old, right out of high school, no business experience whatsoever. She's very smart, very capable. But what she had was she's very creative. She's very curious. And she's very humble. Those 3 characteristics are the most important in being successful, in my opinion. The rest of it I can teach. And so I'm like, look, if I can take an 18-year-old, have her go through the course, we're going to have her business is going to launch next week. Wow. So the business will have been launched in 30 days. It will be profitable in 90 days. So if I can do that with an 18-year-old, I can take someone that, because there really are 3 different groups that I'm trying to help. There are people that are first-time entrepreneurs that want to get it right the first time if they can. Great. There are people who are failed entrepreneurs, and maybe the second, third, fourth, however many times they've failed, they want to get it right this time. And the last category is people that maybe are in corporate America. They see what's happening with AI and maybe what's going to happen to their job. People have this illusion that their companies care about them. They don't. And they have domain expertise, but they've never run a business before, started a business before, exited a business before, and they want to be able to take that domain expertise and do something with it. In a perfect world, I'd have 3 to 4 of each of those categories because all 3 are interesting to me for different reasons.
So many of us as moms, for example, we had careers, we paused them, we raised our kids, now getting back into careers and stumped. How do we create? We have this brilliant idea. How do I do it? I don't know how to execute it. I never went to business school. What do I do? This course sounds like it's honestly an extremely helpful way for moms to get back on their feet again, to create, to do. So it's not just for our children, but it can be used for ourselves as well.
Absolutely. In fact, there's a woman so I live in Scottsdale now, and I've been introduced to this person who's launching a wellness business, and initially just for purely selfish reasons because I want one of these locations in my area so I can go to it myself.
Right.
But I met her, really liked her, and she has the domain expertise, from her career. But the reality is she's never raised capital before. She doesn't understand how, and she's very smart, capable, but she doesn't understand how investors think, how to present the information in a way. And the reality is, like I said, as a perfect example, most people, a lot of business people are scared of financial statements, of income statements. And I made sure that whenever I run a business, every employee, I don't care if you're a receptionist, a coder, I want them to be financially literate. So that when I'm showing them how the company is performing, especially because I want to make all of them equity holders, they understand what that actually means.
That's huge.
So, so to me, I can take someone who can't even spell income statement, and in 20 minutes, they will understand it. It's not that complicated. So my course is basically 30 modules, 30 lessons, in 5 modules. Some of them are 3 minutes long. I think the longest one's like 10 or 12 minutes long, like bite-sized bit. It's just not that complicated if you know how to distill it down to the things that really matter. There's a lot of noise. And the other thing is people would be like, well, I'm trying to do something in this business, this industry or that industry. I've worked in over 40 industries. Only once have I ever been in the same industry twice. I've been in crypto twice. Other than that, I've never had any background in any company that I've ever worked for. And I actually argue that's an advantage, not a disadvantage, because you don't do things the way it's always been done. You come in with a fresh perspective, and you can apply things from other industries into a different industry and accelerate things. So people get intimidated. They get intimidated by the Ivy League degrees. They get intimidated by the financial statements. They get intimidated by the fact that they've never raised capital. I remember the first time when I was raising money after business school, I thought, there's no way anyone in the world would be dumb enough to write me a check. Okay, and we raised $450,000. By the way, it's harder to raise $450,000 than $4.5 million. And I actually raised 2/3 of that capital. My partner raised the other third, and honestly, it's understanding, and I just learned by doing. And ultimately, that's what I'm trying to explain to people. In fact, with the business with Anna, even though we're not going to need to raise capital, I'm making her raise capital anyway because I just think it's important. For people to understand. It's such an important part, especially for people that want to scale something a little bit more aggressively. Bringing in capital and bringing in additional mentorship can be really helpful.
Anna's so lucky to have you as a mentor. I would love for you to look at the camera here and give that mentorship advice to all the parents watching, all the students watching on how to really take that next step. What would be your advice to say to people who have that idea, who have, but just don't know where to start, don't know what to do, feel lost?
So the thing that people have the biggest challenge with is asking for help. Everyone, I don't care who you are, no matter how successful you are, you could be Elon Musk, Steve Jobs, doesn't matter. Everyone has had someone help them along in their career path. I remember Steve Jobs telling a story about, I think he had, it was one of the founders of Hewlett Packard, I forget if it was Hewlett or Packard, but one of the guys where he basically had, called him up from the phone book and he gave him a bunch of spare parts for him to build some stuff and then gave him a job as a summer intern, I think unpaid even. And obviously, look where that ended up for him. People have to ask for help. So I would say if you have an area of interest, you have tools like LinkedIn, you have things like Instagram where you can message people directly. If you ask people, hey, you're doing something I'm really interested in, can I just pick your brain? Can I buy you coffee? Can I take you to lunch? I just want to pick your brain. People want to be helpful. They'll be flattered that you ask them. Even people, maybe not, Taylor Swift or someone like that, but the reality is most people, if you reach out to them, are going to want to be helpful as long as you ask nicely. And then the other thing I would say is find ways to add value. Like I went to a mastermind. I was the oldest person at this mastermind by 30 years. There was 2 17-year-olds, 2 18-year-olds, a 19, a 20, a 22, a 24, 25, 27, 29, and me at 59. And yeah, I'm sure they learned some things from me. I learned at least as much from them as they learned from me. That you can always find ways to add value in the most, obscure ways. Hey, I saw this book about this topic you're really interested in. You send them the book. So reach out to people, ask for help and guidance. And then ultimately, once you put your toe in the water and you feel like this is something that really does speak to you, then that's when you want to become kind of obsessed and really go down the rabbit hole and become an expert. The reality is, Jesse Eitzler said this, I don't know if he's the first person, but if you spend 18 minutes a day on something, that's 100 hours a year, you'll be in the top 5% of people in the world about that thing. Could be playing the piano, underwater basket weaving, juggling, doesn't matter. Pick 2 things, okay, every year. That's 36 minutes a day. You do that for 5 years, you're going to be in the top 5% of people in the world in 10 different things. There's no way you can't monetize that. And also find out what you're passionate and interested in.
Well, great advice. Really great advice. I think we are so focused on the wrong things. Everyone's kind of we're like sheep, right? We all go down this road, and you're here to say that doesn't work for everybody, right? And so here's an alternative. People who are interested in learning more about what you're doing, about your course, where do they find the information?
So you can find me on Instagram. It's got my link tree is there. And anyone who, if you DM me Moms Matter, the course is going to be $5,000. I'll give 20% off the course for anyone who puts Moms Matter. When you DM me, course is launching next week. And I think at the end of the day, I am as passionate about entrepreneurship as you could be about anything. I've been mentoring people for decades. And now I'm just doing it, quite frankly, in a more thoughtful and intentional way. And so I've never been more excited about it.
That's amazing. I mean, it's really an honor to meet you. I love meeting people like you who actually care about the next generation, who are willing to step in, make change, be a mentor. I mean, so much to learn from you. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. Thank you for taking the time to create a course that can help educate at a fraction of the cost. Right. It's really pretty extraordinary. I can't wait to hear the results and to see all the great things that people do with this course. And for moms who are watching, we are always so resistant to invest in ourselves. I'm going to do this course. We need to invest in ourselves. We need to push forward. It's the only way. So let's stop making up excuses and just go for it. Thank you for inspiring us. Thank you for being here. Best of luck.
Sure, and thanks for having me.
Thank you.